stop blaming, accusing, targeting, ostracizing, condemning unvaccinated children as a health risk, which would then make this subject completely moot.
This is why we have an expert affidavit from that man.
You guys are gonna like Dr. Lauer's affidavit a lot, and it's going through the other night. I think we have 10 like affirmative exhibits that are gonna be going with it. But there would be like 20 about the absence of what the New York State Department of Health did not do and did not provide, and what the CDC did not provide about the data from the alleged measles outbreak. For example, in Disneyland, the Disneyland hoax that created the California law, 37% of the people in that quote-unquote outbreak had vaccine strain measles, right? Because they submitted the data that never made the news, right? But 37% of people had vaccine strain, right? So we don't know, to take it, Larry.
On the CDC website, there's a very strong recommendation that any time a state or a community deems that there's a possible outbreak of an infectious disease, it is a requirement by the Department of Health to evaluate those children to see what kind of infectious disease they have. The New York State Department of Health did not follow the CDC recommendations. There were over 800 kids who the New York State and New York City Departments of Health have said were confirmed cases of measles. The real question is, were these really confirmed as per the CDC recommendations? We do not have that data. And in fact, anecdotally, New York State told the physicians not to do the tests. So that's anecdotal. I only know that from being in the communities, but not something that I could put in the affidavit. So New York State Department of Health lied when they said that they were confirmed cases. So we don't know what kind of illnesses the kids had. And there's a set of papers in the literature that specifically state that if the children are found by analysis to have a measles virus infection that is consistent with a side effect of the vaccine, it is important for the Department of Health to alert the public that it was a vaccine strain that caused the outbreak, because a vaccine strain illness should not be equated with a public health emergency. So that's in the literature. And what New York State did not do was they did not do the testing. Now, Dr. Blog is one of the physicians who wrote she's the physician who wrote an affidavit for the state regarding the pro-vaccine side. And in her affidavit, she said that the measles infection is a very, very contagious infection. If that's the case, it should have been very curious to the New York State Department of Health why over 90% of the cases were simply in 2 counties out of 62 counties in New York State. Because viruses that are very contagious don't know communities. They don't know boundaries. And they don't know ethnic populations. So the reality is that when there is a vaccine strain measles outbreak, meaning that the vaccine itself was not properly attenuated, meaning it was more active and virulent than just simply giving an antibody response in the body. When that occurs, an outbreak is almost always very, very close to the vest, meaning that would explain why it was only seen in 2 communities out of 62. And if New York State had done the proper testing of the vaccine to see if it was too virulent, and of the children who had the measles infection to see what type of measles virus they had. In all likelihood, this was a vaccine strain measles infection, which is known to be a side effect of the vaccine and not a public health emergency. And so New York State Department of Health failed to do their job, and instead they lied and said the cases were confirmed, and they didn't do their due diligence to actually evaluate all the possible reasons that an outbreak could have occurred. It's very strange that two communities where there are lots of people moving through those communities that are non-Jewish, that are outside of the state, that are coming through, and why did just those communities get the illness? That should have raised a red flag that something else was going on and New York State failed us. And we're hoping that the information in the affidavit helps to begin a different conversation.